You mentioned Born and Raised, which was kind of the blueprint for what would come after. So was there a distinct visual image that brought along?
Yeah, because I mean the lyrics on that as well is sort of like I mean they started out with just the lines, you know, born and raised, and they had the lines under the desert sun, and they had these sort of these sort of descriptions about you know, almost like geographical, you know, did the place that you grew up, did it shape you in any way? And I grew up, you know, by the ocean. Always been close to the ocean, and always spent all the summers, you know, in boats, going around in the fjords, and I think it probably shaped me a lot. And I was trying to do this almost like a hippie-ish kind of thing on this song where I wrote this lyric together with a woman called Nina Nilsson, fantastic writer, because I wanted it to feel sort of like epic, but also like very small and close. So when she added these lines, you know, like born under the desert sun, mouth of cinnamon, all these sort of like very visceral kind of things, I love that. So I think probably the title came from that as well, and just the whole imagery of the record, almost.
And well, you mentioned writing with somebody else, and you've written with let's see, I have a list here: David Poe, David Ballewald, Ingrid from High as a Kite. So a bunch of people, and you've been doing this music thing for a while now. So what for you is the added value of writing with others?
Oh, it's just a new perspective. I mean, just someone taking a look at what you're doing and you know, without thinking it, just doing it in a complete different way. I mean, I'm so locked up sometimes in a way of working that it's, you know, I've been trying, you know, desperately to find all sorts of tricks to, you know, non-drug related tricks to sort of free the mind a little bit from the usual patterns. Right. So a lot of things have been like, you know, setting up for recording while I go to bed, so that, you know, when the first thing I do when I wake up is just press record and then sing, because that way I'm sort of like singing half asleep, and I'm avoiding some of the usual melodic patterns that I always do. So just trying to do all these things, and I think lyrically I need that from someone else. I need someone else to come in and sort of, well, it's just refreshing to have a different take on it, and also not just lyrically, but also in songs where you know, I think I have a song and I think it's finished and I'm feeling good about it, and you show it to someone else and they're like, yes, but it doesn't really have a chorus, does it? But you know, this is the chorus. No, that sounds like a pre-chorus. Really? Okay. So then they come up with something, and it just opens up the whole thing.
So you don't get stuck in a comfort zone of sorts.
Well, no, yeah, it's just hard to sort of, when you've been doing it for a while. You know the inroads of your creative mind. You know which paths you're gonna follow.
So do you have an example then, if you listen to back to the album now, of something that maybe surprised you that it ended up there, or something that you don't think could have happened on previous albums maybe?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a song on the record called Baby Blue, which I wrote on the last day of writing. I was in LA writing. I had my family there. We rented this little house, and I got this idea the last day, and it felt like a really good idea. I was so happy with it. I came home with it, and I showed it to the producer, the guy who was going to produce the record for me, a guy called Kåre Vesterheim. And and that's when he said, you know, oh, it's a great song, but it doesn't have a chorus. And I'm like, yes, I think it has a chorus. No, it doesn't have a chorus. And he said, what if I show this to Ingrid, you know, from High as a Kite, and see if she comes up with something. So, you know, she came up with a chorus, which I never would have, because I thought the song was finished.
Right.
And partly that's taste, and partly sometimes it's a fear of, you know, becoming too poppy, or you know, I don't know, it exposes something in you when you go for those sort of very hooky things,
Right.
which I tend not to do, but I like it. As a listener, I love it. I don't usually go there too much myself.
Well, that's a fascinating thing, and this I hear this more often in when I talk to artists, where pop almost has in some ways a bad name. If you know what I mean, that people try to avoid it. So how do you feel about pop music, if we want to call it that?
I mean, there's so many nuances of
Right.
pop anyways. I mean, it would be stupid of me to say that I'm not in pop music. I'm definitely in pop music.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also not in the most commercial,
Sure,
you know, world of pop music. But then again, I'm not Radiohead. I'm not experimental, you know. But I'm sort of like somewhere in between on the experimental spectrum, I think. But I don't know. Pop just has sort of like a stigma, I think, because sometimes it's I don't know. Sometimes you hear people say, you know, oh, it's a really good pop song, and when someone says it's a really good pop song, it's almost like they're saying, yeah, it was good for pop. You know, it's like. But I don't know. I've always loved it. I grew up with pop music, and I see myself as a pop artist, and I have no no qualms about saying that I'm doing pop music. But yeah, just.
No, I just find that fascinating for myself as well, because from our perspective, from the media, they seem to have that a little bit as well. So it's
Well, it's considered, you know, simple, I guess, because it's supposed to grab you right away, you know. And I don't know. I think one of the things that happens with the most immediate things is obviously, and that's happened to a lot of people, I guess, who listen to records. You know, the first song that they started to like on the record is probably the first song that they're going to stop listening to. Sure. And they're going to get into other songs. So maybe it's sort of like, almost like a gateway into to some other things, you know.
Fair enough. So I want to get back to writing together just quickly. Because, well, you've mentioned that it is a reflective album, looking back at your own past, figuring certain stuff out. When songs are that personal and you have to share that with somebody, is that easy? To kind of go to one of these writers and say, well, this is what I'm feeling, this is...
Well, I mean, it's still a craft, you know? It's still... I mean, you could say I'm going to be as personal as whatever, but it's still got to be good craftsmanship. It's still got to be a good lyric. Still got to be a good song. So to me, that's not really hard because, you know, I'm writing with people who are mostly my own age or maybe a little bit older even, so that, you know, they can... They're looking at this from another, you know, 10 years down the line, and they've been through it, you know, those kind of things that I'm feeling or thinking about. And also, you know, there's don't ever let the facts get in the way of a good story or a good song. It's another thing. I mean, they're personal songs and all, but if I go down a road on one of these songs and it starts to diverge from my life, that doesn't bother me. I mean, if it turns out that musically it's going to work out better, then that's fine, because what I'm doing, you know. I want to make a good song. So if I start down the sort of like autobiographical thing and then I start veering towards something more, you know, fictional, then I'll gladly go down that fictional way if it makes for a better song.
And I suppose then it allows the listener to be able to relate to it perhaps easier or better as well. By not just
maybe not by being a little bit broader, maybe.
Final question then, because well, it's quite an eclectic album, and part of kind of music these days is electronic elements start becoming more prominent. So for you, you mentioned the synthesizer, but what was the appeal for incorporating those elements?
Oh, it was just to see if you can sort of like, you can get a different sound but the same feel. So I think it sounds a little bit different, but I think it still feels like my album, you know? Right. It's just a different way of getting to that same feeling, really. I mean, it's not anything drastic at all. It's just, it's the same. It's warm. It's organic. It's close. You know, everything feels like pretty close. It's not like a distant kind of thing.
But is this then part of what you mentioned earlier as well, where you don't want to get stuck in your ways in a way that you want to try out?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the whole point for me, I think, in continuing to make records, is just to try and, you know, it's still got to be me. It's still got to be I mean, musicians and artists are so intuitive about these things. You know, once you make something and it doesn't sit right with you when you sing it, there's no way it's not going to happen. It's not going to be put on a record.
Sure.
It's not going to be sung on the road. It's got to be something that's, and it doesn't have to be like necessarily one thing. I mean, musicians and artists have all, you know, 1,000 kinds of difference of tastes and everything. But I think the main thing is that I've never really seen an artist that I like or look up to. Sort of like, it seems like what they're doing something that feels, you know, natural to them, and doesn't feel like bullshit in a way. I mean, because you can't go on the road and play, you know, 100 dates with something that feels like, it's like it's fake, you know. Well, you could, but it would drive you mad.
So very last question then, and because your debut album came out in 2002, can you get sick of your own songs?
Of course. Do it all the time. Okay. So we have certain rules, you know, in the band. Certain songs are never to be played on the on the sound check. Okay. If you're gonna play them, you're gonna play them at the concert, but you're not gonna touch them before.
I'm not gonna make you point them out.
No.
Thomas, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, man.
Thank you.